Forget Technicolor dreams. Let's talk about the supposedly drab wardrobes of history. If you think the average medieval European looked like a walking potato, you're in good company. Modern minds picture the past as one endless brown and gray sweater vest party, with mud and misery on the menu. Poor peasants, the myth goes, never got the memo about dressing for Coachella. But let's stain that myth a different color. Why does this colorless cliché persist? Thank the old masters, and maybe early TV, which wasn't exactly a fan of flattery or vibrant hues. Those ancient portraits look drab because nobody told Rembrandt to turn off sepia mode, and your high school textbooks? Let's just say they were printed before rainbow ink went mainstream. Now there's a grain of truth buried in the mud. Bold dyes were no walk in the park, unless you were a medieval chemist with a steady supply of snails, rare roots, and a suspiciously hefty tab at the apothecary. For most folks, color came at a pricey one, which definitely toned down the party for peasants and penny pinchers. But here's the plot twist. There was color. Plenty of it, especially if your bank account or ecclesiastical clout matched your fashion sense. Royals, nobles, and the ever-flashy church crowd strutted in reds, blues, and purples so vivid they'd make a modern influencer weep with envy. Even humble workers sported color from time to time, fieldwork and sumptuary laws permitting. Still, laundry was nobody's friend. If you think brown is boring, try preserving a crimson doublet with river water and lye soap. Colors faded fast, so no one was a rainbow on parade all year long. The truth? The past wasn't couture Candyland, but it sure wasn't 50 Shades of Mud either. Welcome to history's subtly chic and occasionally surprisingly spunky spectrum. However, while colors might seem dull, social distinctions were clear through the choice of fabrics. Imagine crashing a medieval party and playing Guess Who's the Peasant based on outfits alone. Spoiler alert, you'd probably flunk. The popular myth paints nobles and peasants like they came from different planets, as if medieval bouncers cordoned off earth tones from anything that sparkled. If haute couture had existed in the 1300s, it'd be called haute sheep, a runway inspired by Bessie and her flock. But here's the plot twist a knight's codpiece would envy. Folks across the social ladder often wore the very same styles. Tunics, cloaks, hats, belts, no exclusive after-party garb here. Peasants rocked whatever their sheep spat out each season, while nobles weren't so original. They just upgraded to flashy fabrics like silk and velvet, shipped in via a scenic, multi-stop, dusty trade route. Enter sumptuary laws, the medieval version of a dress code with teeth. These decrees made it crystal clear that the shiniest colors and richest materials were reserved for the VIPs. Peasants stuck to sturdy wool and linen in shades ranging from mud puddle brown to faded turnip. Accessories? Everyone cinched their tunics with belts and scrambled into shoes, all the same uniform pieces, just at wildly different price tags. Nobles flaunted imported silks. Peasants just hoped their wool wasn't still attached to the sheep. The one thing to truly unite highborn and lowborn? Dirty laundry. Baths were rarer than a knight's humility, so you could spot a noble by the glow of satin, or a peasant by their natural eau de shepherd. Same silhouettes, different sparkle, and maybe a lingering sheep aroma. Moreover, the styles worn by different genders reflected unique societal roles and expectations. Hook, imagine every medieval woman wrapped head to toe in a potato sack, stumbling through history with the grace of a burlap ghost. Sound familiar? Thanks to costume dramas, Renaissance fairs, and Halloween stores, we're all sold the same cliché. Medieval Europe was basically one endless, itchy sack race. Myth. Cue the dreaded potato sack dress, the default uniform for so-called historically accurate costume designers who think everyone back then wore shapeless mud-brown bags. Meanwhile, historians clutch their linen handkerchiefs in despair. Because if medieval attire were truly accurate, you'd look less burlap blob and more Project Runway Plague Edition. Facts. Here's the real stitch. Medieval women layered up, sure, but those layers weren't all sacks. Think tailored gowns, rich wools, vibrant dyes, and, hold your breath, bodices so snug they practically invented deep sighs and dramatic gasps. Fashion actually followed rules. Sumptuary laws dictated which colors, fabrics, and trims were fair game depending on your rank. No velvet for peasants. Nobles flexed with silk and bedazzled brocade. Punch the fitted kirtle. Basically medieval Spanx, with more lacing and zero lycra. Accessories ranged from jeweled belts to sleeves so voluminous they could double as parade banners. Necklines zigzagged up, down, and sideways faster than 14th century gossip about Lady Marjorie's décolletage. Bridge. And let's not forget, Europe was a patchwork runway. Italian silks, French henons, English sideless surcoats. The era was anything but a monochrome hay bale. Sure, working women rocked practical tunics for manure duty, but nobility took their fashion clout and cleavage seriously. So next costume party, please, for the ancestors' sake, ditch the sack. They knew how to work. Beyond clothing styles, protective gear like armor was also carefully designated by social status and role. Imagine gearing up for grocery shopping in full metal mesh. Suddenly, those shopping carts look a lot less menacing. Sure, people might stare as you clank your way to the produce aisle, but hey, that's the price of safety and impeccable medieval chic. After all, isn't chainmail supposed to be strictly reserved for knights jousting, dragon slaying, and brooding dramatically on misty hills? That myth sticks around, thanks to Hollywood and the cosplay corner of the Renaissance Fair. Let's be honest. In most movies, if you're not swinging a sword or rescuing a princess, chainmail conveniently vanishes. This knights-only club would have drawn some serious side-eyes back in the real Middle Ages. Here's the real deal. Chainmail was the medieval multi-tool of armor. Soldiers, mercenaries, and everyday folk suiting up for self-defense or surviving dangerously crowded festivals wore mail for its unbeatable anti-stab skills. Safety wasn't just for the battlefield. Butchers slipped on mail gloves to dice steaks without risking a finger. Or 3. Royal Guards rocked it to look both fabulous and functional. Basically the Secret Service of yore, but with more sparkle. And let's raise a tankard to the smiths and artisans, the original armor influencers, who designed mail for just about everyone. Couldn't afford the full nightly bling? No worries. There were practical and affordable options. Fancy a thigh-length hauberk, a snug coif, or mittens for your next onion-chopping/juggling daggers session? Chainmail had you covered. Horses strutted around in mail too, and rumor has it, the occasional dog got in on the action. Cats wisely sat that one out. So next time you spot chainmail at the market, remember, it's not a costume, it's history's multitasking safety gear. Plus, you never know when a rogue cabbage might launch an attack. In addition to clothing, the state of cleanliness impacted how garments looked and were perceived. Picture every medieval peasant wrapped in a permanent cloud of stench, like human-shaped mops gone rogue, trailing a fog potent enough to make nearby cabbages wilt in protest. Ah, the classic myth. Our ancestors were supposedly too busy surviving plagues and jousting for tinder matches to bother with soap. Or, heaven forbid, clean socks. Legend says they wore the same mud-seasoned tunic until it practically disintegrated, creating an aromatic force field even the bravest rat wouldn't cross. But hold your nose, medieval folks actually bathed. Granted, their tubs were wooden, jacuzzis were still centuries away, and their soap hovered somewhere between spa luxury and sandpaper wrestling. But water and effort definitely played a role. Clothes. Sure, outer layers got grimy, but linen underclothes were regularly swapped and scrubbed, at least if you had the coin for a spare pair. Yes, medieval peasants did change their underwear, just on a schedule that would make modern gym rats faint. Forget modern chain coffee shops. Town bathhouses back then could outnumber Starbucks per capita. Bathing wasn't just accepted, it was social. Right up until the Black Death made group spa days feel a little precarious. Even the muddiest peasants kept up with hygiene as best they could, trading avocado scrubs for whatever didn't double as pig feed. Behind the scenes, washerwomen hustled hard. Aristocrats weren't the only ones dropping off laundry. Peasants' shirts spent more time soaking in buckets or streams than on their owners. Plus, cleanliness got a divine PR boost, with clergy preaching both bodily washing and soul scrubbing. So next time you picture medieval Europe, don't imagine one big BO bomb, just a society figuring out how to avoid smelling like last week's onion stew. Fashion also extended to accessories and headwear, which carried their own myths and symbols. Picture this: a moonlit forest clearing, a bubbling cauldron, and a coven of witches sporting hats so tall they could snag a passing bat mid-flight. You know, the classic conical topper that every Halloween aisle and every pop culture spellbook swears is as essential as an eye of newt. But buckle up, If pointy hats actually granted magical powers, half of Renaissance Europe would have been floating off to brunch buffets on flying broomsticks. Now, the myth goes that only those steeped in potion, brewing, hex-casting, and nocturnal cackling dared don these gravity-defying fashion statements. Truth is, medieval nobles rocked them with gusto. Well, at least the rich ladies did. Known as hennins, these hats soared skyward in the 15th century, serving as neon billboards shouting, "Look at me, I'm fabulously wealthy." The only spell these noble women cast was one of envy and probably a touch of neck strain. Don't think witches held an exclusive lease on the conehead couture. Wizards, professors, and even religious bigwigs strutted their own pointy headgear. Trying to sneak up on one? You'd have better luck hiding a peacock. The hat would poke around the corner a good 5 seconds before its owner made an entrance. A magical blunder of epic proportions. Alas, history had other plans. Thanks to the Inquisition and a slew of colorful folktales, witches got saddled with the PR nightmare, and suddenly those pointy hats weren't posh. They were suspicious. Fast forward to today, and pop culture has glued this silhouette to witches like a stubborn potion stain, even though these hats once perched atop Europe's most fashion-forward elites. Abracadabra. What was haute couture is now straight-up hocus pocus. Footwear, often overlooked, also reveals interesting contrasts between function and fashion. Imagine a time when shoes weren't style icons, but full-on foot prisons. Way before sneaker drops and Instagram influencers flexing their limited editions, people strapped on footwear that prioritized survival over swagger. The earliest shoes weren't racing to Paris Fashion Week. They were desperately trying to keep your toes from becoming nature's chew toys. Let's shatter a myth. Some picture ancient folks gliding around in elegant sandals or couture boots. Nope. Their shoes were basically prehistoric bark burritos laced with whatever scraps the forest grudgingly surrendered. Leather, bark, whatever, didn't actively fight back. If Mother Nature didn't bolt it down, some caveman probably wrapped it around his foot. The design mantra? Clunky, heavy, borderline waterproof, and always, always eye-wateringly ugly. These weren't shoes. They were ongoing peace treaties with frostbite and gravel. Style points? Zip zero nada. They came in only one shade, drab, one mood, misery, and one shape, a sad, blocky foot coffin. Matching your shoes to your outfit. Dream on. Heck, matching left and right wasn't even a concept. Symmetrical misery was the only fashion statement. If you wanted to be avant-garde, you'd carve a personal message into your soul with a sharp rock. True innovation at blister-level expert. The only thing these primal shoes attracted were calluses and blisters. Today's dad shoes look like runway royalty compared to these foot prisons of the past. But back then, risking toes for fashion, not worth it. Survival trumped style, and the real breakthrough would be inventing something that fit at all. And so, with that humble and ache-filled beginning, footwear's epic trek from frostbite fighters to catwalk contenders had just taken its first wobbly step. Finally, despite all these nuances, it is a misconception that fashion remained static over long periods. Imagine a medieval peasant, straw hat crooked, boots squelching mud, tumbling headlong into Victorian England on a rogue time travel whim. What does he expect? Silks, satins, a carnival of colors, a peacock parade. What does he get? Another tunic. Cue the weary sigh. Not this again. If you'd gleaned your fashion history from droopy textbooks or drama queen mannequins, you'd think pre-modern style hit the snooze button for centuries. Same pointy shoes, same somber hues, the same trusty tunic, because why fix perfection? If you'd been the original medieval #OOTD influencer, your followers' scroll would induce chronic déjà vu. But here's the Renaissance reality check. Fashion did evolve, just at the pace of a snail choosing its Sunday best. No dizzying seasonal drops. No Zara, no Instagram. Only painstakingly hand-dyed wools, local linens, and tailors with prices scarier than your rent. Dyes were treasures, clothes treated like family pets, patched, worn, and treasured for years. Trends. They traveled at horseback speed, so Venice's hottest look arrived fashionably late, a century or so later. Still, hush the haute couture skeptics. Social ranks strutted loud and clear, just in whispers. Differences were less runway razzle-dazzle and more spot the velvet trim. Those sumptuary laws weren't jokes. Peasants in purple disrupted the monarchy's vibe. Dreaming of crimson? Then hand over your social dignity to the velvet elites. Slowly, flair infiltrated the ranks. By the Renaissance, sleeve slashes, rough collars, and more hues than a music festival claimed a new era. Centuries in the making, peasants' descendants finally scored juicier #OOTD lines. If only someone had invented the camera.